Ну, кажи ж.
Надя, ти так мене будеш напрягати.
Your English is fine, so no
Зараз я...
worries.
Thank you very much. Сам процес писання, the same process of the writing is є головне для мене.
Well, so the process of writing is the main thing for me.
Я не думаю в цей час про книжку, про результат. Тобто це практично зараз на рівні молитви, як розмова не з читачем, а з творцем, з Богом, тобто.
So yes, so while I'm writing, I'm not thinking about, stress or troubles. So like I'm all in the process, and it's kind of my way of praying and my way of communicating with God. Yeah, so I'm not thinking about troubles while I'm writing.
That's good. That's good.
Е,
I understand that.
Like it helps me in a way not to think about troubles
Yes.
when I'm writing.
І це єдине, що має смисл зараз. Тому що я не знаю, це екзистенція, так? Я не знаю, чи я буду сам жити завтра, так? Бо тут ракета в наш будинок гримнула і в нас вікна повибивало, скажи. І тому я говорю практично, ну, як з Богом, як з моїми предками. І це мені допомагає не закінчити, наприклад, життя самогубством, чи щоб від тому абсурді. Зрозумів?
Так, багато не буває. Yes, so it's for me, it's the only thing that makes sense right now. It's like to write poetry, and it helps my existence because it like kind of, in a way, it relaxes me because you never know what's going to happen. Like we had our windows broken because of the, like shelling, the rockets. So we had no windows. So in a way, it helps me again to speak with my ancestors and like higher, like God and higher souls, let's say, like.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you so much for answering my questions. I feel so terrible for what you're all going through, and I don't know what to do.
Я не знаю, що робити, і шкода, що ви це жахливо почуваєш, що це все проходить.
Ну, я скажу, що я не переживаю, тому що, от, власне, як і моя бабуся, яка жила під час війни і під час таких катастроф, катаклізмів, тобто тут треба бути в релігійній системі координат, бо всі людські системи координат, вони не допомагають взагалі прожити це життя духовно.
So, I'm not worried very much. I'm trying not to be worried too much about the situation because, again, I remember my grandma who went through the different wars, yes, the wars and catastrophes. And so it's important, again, to rely on that religion's like paradigm system of coordinates and like try to find some like something important to rely on, like something important for you to rely on.
Yes, and very help to exist in this catastrophic situation. Ну, because якщо я буду в депресії чи в агресії, то це є смерть і абсурд. Практично. І поезія вже не допомагає в цій. Ну, тобто, самописання – це як допоміжний елемент, а не основний вже для мене. Хоча раніше поезія для мене була основна. Основне духовне життя. То я тобі формулюю, можеш просто. А тепер це допоміжне. Головне – це розмова з Богом, а не з людьми. А з людьми це вторинне вже, якби.
Okay, so yes, yeah, so poetry helps you not to go in either into like, again, depression or some like aggressive behavior, and it really helps. So for me, it's important, again, in difficult times to, again, communicate with like God through poetry and not to rely too much on like people's, let's say,
Okay, okay, thank you. Thank you for
Thank you very much. Thank you, and God bless
and
you all.
thank you for very interesting question. Ні, як я кажу своїм студентам, часом так пояснюю, що сам дещо зрозумію.
Thank you for such an interesting question. Sometimes what I tell my students is that while I'm teaching them, sometimes I get to understand some things for myself. Like, so when you were asking me while I'm answering, then I understand something for myself too, like because of your interesting questions. So
Thank
thanks
you.
for that.
Thank you too.
Ой, так, excuse me, I maybe turn off electricity for my turn on.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Ihor,
Hello. Oh,
I am so glad that you can make it here, even though physically you're not. Welcome, and my heart goes out to you.
так.
Thank you, glad to see you.
I'm glad to see you. І щось є звуком, ніби щось. А, це запис іде. Окей, окей, окей. Very nice.
Скажи, thank you,
А,
glad to
це
see you.
адмін.
Скажи, thank you, glad to see you.
Testing 1, 2.
I'm glad to see you.
Testing 1, 2.
Yes.
Better.
And we'll be beginning maybe this meeting.
We'll wait for a few more people.
Emailing, what?
Gonna wait for a few more people to come.
But it is at 9:30.
Is it?
Ah.
Start-
Mhm.
Start out, it's gonna be very long. It's gonna be very long.
Now we have 8 participants, yes?
Yes. Ihor, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Good. Okay, so there are two things. One is we have people all over the country that you can see on your screen. And also here in Atlanta, Georgia, we have the convention and we're in a big room and many people can see you, but you can't see them. Okay. All right.
Understand.
And so we're ready to begin. If you can get your daughter back on the screen so that we can use her translation if necessary. There she is. Okay. So I'm going to begin the program now with introduction to Ihor Pavlyuk. I first met Ihor Pavlyuk years ago at a poetry reading and book signing at the DeLand, Florida Public Library. It was organized by
Це все добре.
Paul and Dr. David Axelrod, the Volusia County Poet Laureate. When I listened to him speak, I was taken by his poems about Ukraine and its long and often sad history of war and oppression. His poems and his approach awakened in me feelings and emotions I have felt about the centuries of England's wars, invasion and oppression against Ireland, my heritage, my Irish heritage. We are forced to look at these experiences and wonder why. Why war? Why not peace? What, if anything, is gained by fighting and the subjugation of others? And why have wars been a seemingly never-ending part of the human experience? Listening to the news and the internet with the vivid daily reports of the war in Ukraine, I thought of my friend and fellow poet Ihor. I contacted him and asked him about what it is like to be a poet in Ukraine today? His answers are in an interview which was done in a Poets and Poetry magazine last fall. And it was the beginning of a long-term internet relationship between the two of us. During these conversations, I became aware that Ihor is in a position to become the Nobel Prize for Literature for this year, 2024. He has a mentor, believe it or not, who's Chinese, who was the poet, the Nobel Prize for Literature recipient in 2012. And I think some of you will remember that China had a one-child policy. And this Nobel Prize for Literature recipient adopted Ihor informally as his mentor and organized a campaign internationally for him to be nominated for the Nobel Prize for Literature. Paul Ford and I worked with him, with Ihor, and with the Nobel Prize Committee to enable us, that is NFSPS, to become a nominating agency for the Nobel Prize for Literature. And we put together a comprehensive history of our organization and submitted it for the Nobel Prize Committee. Subsequently, we were able to work with Ihor and nominate him for the Nobel Prize for Literature. And it was quite a lengthy process, but one that was successful and was part of an overall campaign for him to become the Nobel Prize recipient. We had planned an elaborate tour of the United States for Ihor, including 5 states and the 5 state chapters of NFSPS, for him to come to the U.S. He would have started here in Atlanta, and we had 5 states where he would visit: Florida, Iowa, Colorado, and Illinois, for him to visit. And the planning was very advanced. And when we were getting ready to buy a ticket for him to actually come for the tour, there was an edict in Ukraine that no male under the age of 60 could leave Ukraine. So we decided that we would try this morning something that's really never been done, and is happening right now, to bring him here through the magic of Zoom and let him talk to you about what it's like to write poetry under fire. There's a very lengthy presentation that he prepared. We've been working on it for a couple of months. I'm going to turn it over to him and his beautiful daughter, who will help him in translating for you. First, I would like to read a little bit of our letter that we sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. Friends, I'm writing to support the nomination of Ukrainian poet Ihor Pavlyuk for the 2024 Nobel Prize for Literature. I am the Vice President of the United States Federation of State Poetry Societies, with a membership of over 3,500 poets with chapters in 33 states. I have published 7 books, 4 of poetry, and I am often called upon to judge poetry competitions at the national and state levels. For the past 8 years, I've been the director of national competition for written and spoken word poetry contests. In these capacities, I have read and listened to hundreds of poems annually. I am tasked with the responsibility of choosing the best of American poems and poets to receive accolades, cash prizes, and publications of their work. Some years ago, I was privileged to meet Ihor Pavlyuk and become aware of his heartfelt and extraordinary poetry. I was taken by his poems, particularly his poems about his homeland Ukraine with its long and often sad history of endless invasions, wars, and oppression by its bigger and more powerful neighbors. Recent events unfolded with the Russian invasion, prompting me to get in touch with him. The result of our conversation is going to be available to you today. So I'm going to finish my introduction at this time, turn it over to Ihor and to his slide presentation with videos. At the end of that presentation, I will return and talk more about plans that we have for two things. One, working on a Poets for Peace program, and also a way to help the orphans in Ukraine, which are growing, as you can imagine, every day. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ihor. Good luck and thank you.
Have to unmute, Ihor.
Are you on mute?
Ihor, can you unmute, please? You're still on mute.
Звук забув включити.
Sorry for that. I'm very touched with your nice words and your presentation. Thank you very much for that, for your kind words.
Thank you very much. And I can begin presentation. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I try show my presentation and organize my так, отключив демонстрацію. Скажи, що це, що
Ігор.
треба включити дозвіл на
Yeah.
демонстрацію.
Could you please turn on the permission for the participants
Right.
of the
My presentation permission.
because
Go back to share.
Ти включай просто зараз.
We're working on it, Ihor.
Ну, воно мені не,
Працює, так.
не включається зараз. Мгм.
There we go.
I tried. Окей, ну, О, по-моєму, вже починає включатися. Так, окей. Yes.
Not yet, hang on.
Окей, окей.
Чекай. Yes. Зачекай. Hang on.
Okay, we can begin.
Можемо почати.
Угу.
Звук включив, все включив.
Угу. Так, just a moment, воно завантажується в мене зараз якраз тут.
Sorry, it's just takes a little bit of time to download. Can you see, are you able to see that on your screens?
Yes,
Бачать, I know. Думаю, що говориш в той момент, коли мені так. Воно зараз швидко завантажується вже. Бо воно запізнилось. Бач, там у них було запізнення. Так, все повинно бути зараз добре вже.
Звук відключив.
are you able to see the presentation?
Окей.
Okay,
Dear Poetry Society, please excuse my far from perfect English. My heartfelt greetings to all professional poets and poetry lovers of the world and the universe, in particular to the President of the National Federation of State Poetry Societies, Paul Ford, and his first Vice President, Mr. Joseph A. Kavanaugh, with gratitude for the creative friendship with me for a year. The publication of an extensive interview with me in the literary magazine of the Florida State Poets Association focusing on poetry and poets of Florida, poets and poetry. September-October 2023. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this honorable meeting. Poets of all countries, let's unite when politicians and even church hierarchists do not find common ground. My mother died giving birth to me in 1967, a few days later. And the ancient Vikings equated a woman who died in childbirth with a warrior who died in a fair fight. So my mom is a warrior. And I will speak as the son of an eternal warrior. My speech consists of 3 parts. About my poetic path. Modern Ukrainian poetry under the fire of war. About orphans and the possibility of helping them live. The topic of my speech, writing poetry under fire. Under this title, by the way, a month ago I received the Ukrainian British anthology of war poetry published in England.
Peter, you gonna be able to find the video?
Do you want us to play that video, Ihor, now?
Yeah, we got to.
Okay.
Yes, if possible, please.
Okay, yep, I can,
Ukrainian poets cannot dilate. I hear the grass breathing, having fallen flat on my face and the sky on the planet. All are rescued only by this young song, permeated with the smell of mother's milk and thyme, and a salty tear on the lover's lips, sweet with honey. On the white walls I see the white horses dancing a white dance. The wind is covering the stone, as if an attainable star was cognized by the Vedas, and the wages of cranes are hanging like the keys to the
you want me to play the video from here, Ihor? That might be a little smoother.
We should play everything.
Ні, я буду все.
No, thank you so much that Dad is saying that he will try to do him himself
Okay.
on his own. Може Чого ви швидше?
Не перебивай мене.
Poems, sirens and bells. Mama, the fate of humanity is currently wandering in Ukraine. I am ready to live. From the cycle, spring and war, human, minefield, confession of a spiritual warrior, are placed with this patriotic photo of me, when I had a creative meeting in Germany. What does it mean writing under the fire? Sometimes it literally means sleepless nights, when you have to create poetry to the sound of alarm sirens, followed by explosions and a blast wave. Our city of Lviv in western Ukraine, visual part, map of Ukraine, is much quieter to compare with the areas to east and south. This is why our Lviv became a hub for refugees. However, Lviv is safe only relatively. In the course of war, there were quite a lot of cases when missiles exploded in Lviv and our window glass shook and we saw mushroom-like fire in neighbor areas.
This is Igor's home. The missile shattered the windows of his home.
Slide. You can see a picture of the destroyed building, the UNESCO protected in Lviv that was shelled by caliber missiles in July last summer. It is the place where our daughter worked at that time. On the day of attack, 10 local residents were killed there and 45 wounded. On December 29, 2023, before the last New Year, a missile exploded above the building where we live, such a specific New Year greeting. In the neighbor building, 8 people were injured and 1 man died. In our apartment, glass was broken. In the pictures, you see one of the damaged windows, and the glass on the floor with some home plants flowers, the destructive aesthetics of war, as our youngest daughter remarked. The school next to our home also was damaged. Today, every 7th school in Ukraine has been damaged as a result of war. More than 3,500 educational institutions were destroyed in one way or another. Almost 400 were completely destroyed. Dozens of anthologies have now appeared in Ukraine and other countries of the world as artistic reflections on the topic of the modern art war. Many of these anthologies include my poems. Unfortunately, due to objective circumstances, the brutal war in Ukraine, I cannot be physically present in the United States today, although I have visited this poetic country more than once. Opportunity to thank the people of the United States of America, in particular the Ukrainian diaspora in the United States, for their support of Ukraine, which encouraged me to come to your country back in 2020, but I cannot live without Ukraine, because an organic poet must live where he was born and lived until the age of 5, when his poetic world, his alchemy, and metaphysics are formed. My poems have been translated into many languages and published in separate books in Poland, Great Britain, Russia, and France. Fortunately, the history of mankind is a history of wars. And poetry is an anti-war. It is a magical game of the universe with itself. The existential paradox is that under fire, in the trenches, on the trembling line between death and life, only prayers are created, that is, even an atheist begins to believe in God and talk to him, the guide and mediator between the earthly world and the beyond. Poetry becomes psychotherapy. The poet either calls for battle or mourns for dead friends. My aesthetics began with my great-grandmother Hannah, a folk poet who talentedly painted eggs for Easter, sang, and told fairy tales, and my ethics with my grandmother Tanya. Who replaced my parents, prayed and worked. Then there were relatives by blood and relatives in spirit. Friends and poets of the world, Yesenin, Byron, Rambo, from whom I learned the text and life of creativity. I came to the model of God, where enemies and friends are one. And my brother said, "Why do you write? You don't get paid for it, so you're either a fool or a saint." I am a fool who wants to be a saint. And my work is a prayer, obviously. Because I don't get paid for prayer, but I am blessed to communicate with the Creator, to co-create with Him. Now I travel more into my inner world, although I once had the creative happiness to visit many countries of our common planet, including Estonia, Georgia, Russia, Belarus, Germany, Italy, Turkey, Ireland, Pakistan, England, Czech Republic, Switzerland, Austria. I also traveled a lot on the American continent, as far as Florida, to my wife Lyudmila stayed at the university in 1999 to 2000 as a Fulbright scholar. Ihor and Lyud Milo Pavlyuk in Arizona.
His wife was a Fulbright University.
And in neighboring Canada, in particular, in Toronto, my grandmother's brother, Mr. Dimitro Sych, who lived and worked here and became a serious businessman who sent $1 million to Ukraine in the 1970s, but the Soviet government took this money away from our family, is buried. I respectfully love the American classic writers, Jack London, Ernest Hemingway, Walt Whitman, whose integrity of texts and colorful biographies motivated me to become and be a writer with an interesting biography myself. In 2011, 2019, and 2020, 3 books of my poems were published in the United States, Catching Gossamers, Artania, Salt. And now, together with the wonderful Indo-American poet Kalpna Singh Chitnis, who lives and works in the United States, we are preparing to publish my 4th book of poems in the United States, and I am translating her book and plan to publish it in Ukraine. This is a co-creation, a cultural exchange of poetic energy, because the etymology of the word poetry is creation. In its verbal manifestation, for me poetry is, in the metaphysical dimension, an alloy of incompatible energies, in the aesthetic context, music written in words, and in the ethical context, the moral code of the creator of religion. I dream that my books of other genres, including fiction and drama books, will also be translated and filmed in Hollywood. Photo of several books by Ihor Pavlyuk.
So.
Так,
we'll
just
move-
a moment. I post video file. Так, видео. Видео.
Igor Pavlyuk comes from Policia. This region has a special, magic ringing. Moyan about the poet. Christ is the greatest poet in the world. We can only learn from him. You cannot be greater than the great poet. You can be equal to him in your own time. This is the key to my philosophy. The wind of subway, the tunnel smell, eternal ways for masqueraded souls to fly. When Christ stepped in, as to a desert from a dell, they sat and ate, they laughed at him, but didn't crucify. They blamed on rulers, they heavens is ones and plain. Before the crowd come down, it was as tight as fists. Then someone slapped him gently on the shoulder. Say, be honest only, who are the winners, losers on your list? He who was tired of endless revolution came and threw a branch into the ancient fire's arms. He asked them, as Barabbas once, their names. He was a carpenter, and nails were blooming on his palms.
These gaps are how long it takes to travel from here to Ukraine and back. Until the-
Так, excuse me. Так. Окей. And так, що там? Так, і тут уже пішла українська література.
Ukrainian literature. Ukrainian literature has deep and high folklore roots of themes, motifs, and moods. This is the subject of a separate scientific study. Our folk and songwriter is recognized as one of the most melodious in the world. And although I do not plan to give you a lecture on the history of Ukrainian literature today, I will only note that its development from the first poetic work, The Tale of Ihor's Campaign, 1185, through the healthy laughter of Ivan Kotlyarevsky and the prophetic tragedy of Kobzar Taras Shevchenko, Ivan Franko's encycloptism, and Lishaya Ukrainka's modernism was in unison with the development of European and world literature. In addition, our literature is connected by blood ties with the national liberation and dissident movement, so writers often, like Taras Shevchenko and Vasil Stus, were political prisoners in conflict with foreign totalitarian authorities, as were almost all true poets of all countries and peoples, as was one of the greatest poets of humanity, Jesus Christ, who was persecuted and killed. The distinguished Mr. Joseph A. Kavanaugh mentioned me here in the context of the world's highest literary award, the Nobel Prize, which is a great honor for me. I would like to remind the distinguished society that the Ukrainian writer Vasil Stus, as well as our writer Ivan Franko, were nominated for the Nobel Prize. But Ivan Franko died in the year of the nomination, and Vasil Stus died in a Soviet prison for his political beliefs, also in the year of the nomination. Such is the dramatic nature of our spiritual history, as is the spiritual history of humanity as a whole. An orphan. Let me remind you again. My mother died giving birth to me in 1967, a few days later. And the ancient Vikings equated a woman who died in childbirth with a warrior who died in a fair fight. So my mom is a warrior. And God is known to be the father of orphans. My spiritual pedigree is so dramatic. I don't know if I would have become a poet, a historian of emotions, a mediator between spaces and times, if God hadn't separated me from my mother, who was only 27 years old, so early on. Therefore, analyzing now, when I myself have become the father of 2 daughters and now 1 grandson, I realize that God has always taken care of me in my earthly life, held my hand at critical moments of my life. So now that I have grown up, I want to do something nice for my Almighty Father, to love this world He created. And every true poet repeats in a micro-model the spiritual history of the people to which he belongs and of all mankind. So my worldview is modernizing from a pagan poet to a poet who is tolerant of all world religions, in order to eventually become just a poet, a creator, a co-creator with the Almighty. When I was a child, I was both attracted to and frightened by the closed room in our village house, then by our yard, the forest, the city, other countries, other galaxies. At the same time, I was disturbingly attracted to the invisible, intangible world of my grandmother's fairy tales, prayers, the world of good and evil spirits, that is, the other world. I started describing and reformatting all this in myself, sharing my work with people, and became a writer. This is my psychotherapy. Prayer, mission. That is, creativity for me is a fight against fear with the help of love. And since absolute love is the universe, my poetry is an eternal path to the Creator for co-creation with Him. Here is my short poem about this. I forgot the fragments of verses. My hands in the Creator's stay. With Him, We create universes. And DNA. I said at the presentation of the International Switch Prize in 2021. Now there is a war. The full-scale war began for us on the night of February 22nd, 2022, with a phone call from my son-in-law, an officer. I feel that words cannot adequately convey the bloody horrors of war, the loss of relatives, mostly young people. But you continue to write because the poems become a prayer. So my book of the wartime poems was published in Ukraine. Cossack Mamai Dance, * Mamai is a mythical image of a Ukrainian warrior, who has won serious poetry awards in Ukraine. Here is one of my poems about our war.
Peter, he's controlling it.
Yes. Так. Now I post Ukrainian reading my poem. Ігор Павлюк. Вірш Мамай. Битва. Рано темніє. В полі привид Мамая. Він вмирати не вміє. Він між пеклом і раєм. То співає, то б'ється, то сміється, то плаче. Як поранена птиця, характерник козачий. Шрами навхрест у нього, семиструнна шаблюка, щось у ньому від Бога, щось у ньому від крука. А кругом на деревах одноразові гнізда, пінопластові леви мерседесами їздять. Він чужий цьому світу, він сильніший за нього, його зірка ще світить на безсмертну дорогу. І сміються людиська, і кар'єри клепають. Темно, вітряно, слизько, в небі привид Мамая.
Poetry anthologies, as I said at the beginning, were published in 2022 to 2023 in Ukraine and around the world. Here are some of them that I am currently writing an article about. Spring is Armed, an anthology of war poetry, the experience of war, Ukrainian voices. A social action project, Poetry Without Shelter, an anthology, Between the Air Alarms, an anthology of war poetry, Unconquered Ukraine. Almanac, It Turns Out, You Were in the Basement of Mariupol Theater, God. Project of the Institute of Literature. Many Ukrainian poets, including Boris Humaniuk, Victoria Amelina, and Ilya Chernolovsky, have already been killed or are missing in action in this war. About which I gave an interview to the American poet Ilya Kaminsky on June 28, 2022, along with other poets for the Los Angeles Review of Books, entitled They Are Bombing the City. I am editing poems, Conversations with Ukrainian Writers, in which I said, on the streets of bombed Ukrainian cities and villages, dead children's bodies lie with phone numbers on their backs written by their mothers so that they could be identified in the event of the mother's deaths. This is beyond literature. This horror is beyond Stephen King. Therefore, I look more and more inside myself in these eschatological times. I talk to myself, to God, that is, I pray, to my ancestors and descendants, my children and grandson, because I move much less these days. I don't seem to have changed much myself, except I pray more and sleep less. In LVIV there is now a tense silence torn apart by the apocalyptic voices of sirens summoning us to bomb shelters. My life motto of I am ready to live forever, I am ready to die any time has now gained a more concentrated manifestation because the death of a person and their loved ones, which is much more terrible, can be brought by a missile at any time, and this mysteriously makes me appreciate every moment of earthly existence and think about the eternal. Time is now a liquid, blood-stained space metal, heavy and fast at the same time, like an angry hippo or a tank. We are advised to prepare an emergency kit with the essentials in case of an urgent evacuation during an air raid. And I clearly felt that my most valuable property was my flash drive with books written but not yet published. End of the quote. I am happy that even during my physical life I fell into the model of this spiritual law as a Ukrainian, as a European, as a citizen of the world, the universe. My grandmother used to talk to a cow and birds. And now I am talking to a computer and to my late eternal grandmother, who is sacred to me. Because in the 21st century, a person paradoxically becomes a computer, and a computer becomes a person. Between them is a poet who calls the collective mind of humanity to become God, the creator. But not an artificial intelligence. For artificial intelligence has no soul. I am grateful to the universe for creating me as a poet and I talk to it, i.e. pray, with my books. And if people still like my books, as American poets do, I feel a responsibility to be a mediator between ancestors and descendants, different nations, people, and GD, looking for their unifying features and tolerantly relaying them in artistic form to as large an audience as possible, as in this poem of mine, which has been translated into many languages and included in the school curriculum in Ukraine. Little girl. Barefoot girl child. Weeping at her grandma's door. Her disquiet deep. Utumas limping in. No beauty in a cold heart. The cock won't crow again. Who are you sorry for, so? Everyone, she says. Translated by Thomas Moore, Dublin, Ireland. Orphans. As a person who grew up without a mother, I feel sorry for everyone in this world, like this figurative girl of mine. But besides praying for orphans, besides writing poetry about orphanhood, I thank God that I have lived to be a grandfather and want to really help orphans, knowing how hard it is for them to live in this world, not only spiritually but also materially. Especially now, in the time of our cruel war for survival, when many children remain orphans, having lost their parents in this war. That is why I found the orphanage in my homeland, Volin, met its kind director, Viktor Borisovich Maximayuk, to help my countrymen, small, sick orphans living in difficult conditions during the war. God is in charge of their fate. So I'm sure there are people in the United States who would not spare a few dollars to make their fate easier. If my mother's mother, my grandmother Tashana, had not adopted me after my mother's death, I would have been among these children, for whom I bought cookies and candy to meet them, crying for a long time. Here are some photos from the modest home where these poor children, deprived of parental affection, live. An outbuilding in need of reconstruction, entrance to the orphanage, special coordination exercises are performed. Exercises are performed to strengthen the back muscles, good mood after physical therapy, an orphan sorts and learns colors. Ihor Pavlyuk at the orphanage with its director Viktor Maximayuk. Fortunately, there are many such houses in my native Poland and in Ukraine today, and their number is growing, because the number of people who died in this war on the sacred land of Ukraine is growing. During 2 years and 3 months of war, 545 children died in Ukraine. 1,289 were injured. 67,000 children lost their parents. 5,500 children are complete orphans. 2,000 children are considered missing, deported. Ukrainian war-wounded baby is learning again to ride a bicycle without using hands. Financial aid does not compensate these children with the difficult fate of maternal affection, but by helping these children, we can save the earthly world from spiritual, and thus physical, destruction. It is my grandson Danilo who writes poetry on my knee instead of me, secret.
We're going to make this address available to everyone.
Email and phone number of the director of this orphanage, which, unfortunately, is very numerous in Ukraine. To finish, I offer you a popular song on my words from my book for Ukrainian children, Flute.
А сопілка, сопілка, сопілка з калиновим голосом буде довго сміятися, плакати довго в мені. Ой, бабусю, я знов пригортаюсь до нашого колоса. Ой, дідусю, я знову романтик на білім коні. Ви не бачили, ні, ви не знаєте ще нареченої. Дуже шкода, що ми не поклонимось в ноги вже вам. Будуть правнуки ваші гуляти з вітрами зеленими і без вас проводжати лелек сиротлива трава. Наша річка ще стан лісовий перев'язує поясом, тільки люльки багать, що розводила з дідом, нема. Наші коні тепер, білі коні невчасно напоїні, без бабусі дівчиськом розпатланим ходить зима. І минають літа, рідний край на рум'янку настояний, розуміє печаль одиноких ранкових зірок. Покоління моє, звісно, тілом також заспокоїться, їх букет притуливши до серця, як маку вінок. А сопілка, сопілка, сопілка з калиновим голосом буде довго сміятися, плакати довго в мені. Ой, бабусю, я знов пригортаюсь до нашого колоса. Ой, дідусю, я знову романтик на білім коні.
Все.
All of his books are available on Amazon. And that's what this slide is about. How can you find the books? They're on Amazon, okay? I'm not sure where we are in the presentation. I think this is the last slide, but let's let Ihor say goodbye to us for now.
Так.
Yes, that's the last slide. That's the last one.
Так. І тепер, excuse me. Так, де то воно тут є, де ми тут є? Я включаю себе тут, так? Звук. Угу. Так, уже презентацію треба забрати. Так, excuse me. Так, все. Так, де там мої? Так. Thank you, dear friend, for your attention. If you have any question, I will try to answer them with the help my daughter.
Right, so now we're going to have a question and answer period. And maybe we can begin with the people that are on Zoom. And the people in this room can think about questions they may want to ask Ihor. His daughter will help him translate. It's very interesting to me that over the last 14 months, Ihor and I have traded 100 emails. And in the emails, his English is perfect. And the reason for that is he writes them in Ukrainian and they're translated into perfect English. And so for the first year, I thought, he speaks English perfectly. But you can see that his daughter helps him. So are there any questions, Peter, on the on our Zoom attendees?
Yeah, is poet a profession in Ukraine?
Чи поет це професія в Україні?
Ну, я буду тобі казати,
Повільно і
Мгм. Окей. В Радянському Союзі це була професія, поети були дуже багаті люди країни. Тепер це не є професія, це вже є або хобі, або місія.
So, you know, when during the post-Soviet Union, poet was kind of it was a profession, and poets were wealthy people, like they were well paid. But right now, in our time, right now, it's more of a hobby or a mission. It's a hobby, either a hobby or a mission.
For me, it's mission.
Yeah, if I could add to that, during the Soviet times, thank you, Peter. During the Soviet times, those poets who were paid to echo the Soviet communist doctrinaire. There were no poets who could speak out against it. And those poets were well paid because they were propagandists for the state. Is that correct, Ihor?
Yes. Yes, I want to say about this. Вони були poets were slaves of the propaganda. Yes, and many money paid for this process for poetry. But yeah, a lot of money, yes. Yes.
Yeah, and that's why Ihor has been called the citizen's poet of Ukraine, because he did not fill that role. He speaks directly for the people.
Що ти напряму спілкуєшся з людьми, і він таку роль не приймаєш.
Пропаганди то?
Ну, так.
Звичайно, що не приймаю. Я є вільна людина.
Of course, I do not accept like any like to be a poet of propaganda. So I'm a like free person, free person.
І скажи, я більше схильний піти в монастир, ніж бути слугою будь-якої політичної влади.
And I'm like even more prone to go to the monastery to serve in the monastery than to serve like let's say any like political or
Ну, павес.
powers like to serve directly, let's say.
Ну так, окей. Тому що, скажи, це є задрібно для поета займатися політикою. Завдання шамана будь-якого племені, власне, зв'язуватися з Богом, а не з президентами і політиками.
Okay, and I think it's like for poets it's better to again communicate with some like nature, universe, like natural powers than like to be directly involved in politics, let's say, like to serve directly some political powers. And as every like yeah, okay, that's it, sorry.
Скажи ще, excuse me, тут ще додати. В мене був шанс стати депутатом Верховної Ради, але я відмовився, щоб зостатися поетом. Незалежно. I'm sorry.
And I was offered actually to become like the deputy of certain like Ukrainian like governmental structure, let's say, but I refused, yes, because just I want to remain a poet and just keep writing.
Please tell us the story of when you were in engineering school and left to become a poet.
Розкажи, як ти вчився на російському училищі.
Так, це short conversation. Я був, як я розумію, поетом уже у дитинстві. І в військовому училищі я бачив романтику. Я думав, що там є найчесніші люди в армії, і вони літають в космос. Це є поети-романтики. Я надивився кіно про гусарів, про військову романтику, напишу, про військову романтику, і йшов я туди, виявилося, за поезією. І на другому курсі я зрозумів, що я поет, і залишив це училище.
Okay, yes. So I entered like the military academy in St. Petersburg because, you know, as a kid, I watched a lot of like movies and so military was very much like romanticized. It was romanticized, and I watched it, and I thought that it was about like romanticism, you know, romantics and poetry, like this stuff. But then I understood that I was actually a poet from the childhood, and then I left. So I left this military, this engineering. Actually, it was construction engineering. In St. Petersburg, so I left it after the first year of my studies. So during the second year, I left to write poetry.
Скажи, що я закінчив золоту медаль в школі як фізик. Я не писав вірші в школі. Я там почав в військовому училищі писати вірші.
Okay. So I finished school actually like with honors. But I was much more of a like physicist, mathematician, and I never actually written poetry before this like military academy in St. Petersburg. So actually it was this academy that inspired me to write.
Yes.
So this was when I studied like physics, excuse me. I studied physics and like engineering at the military academy, and there I started writing. It inspired me.
entry point. І вони мене послали довго, мене не відпускали з училища, а потім послали в тайгу як покарання в тюрму будувати дорогу із ув'язненими. Тайга, Забайкалля тайга, тобто Сибір.
Okay, so but it was not as easy to leave this military academy. It was quite difficult. They didn't want to let me go, so as a like punishment, they sent me to build roads in Taigar, like Siberia. So as a punishment, like I had to build roads there.
І ще момент, тому що вони побачили КГБ, що мої предки були засуджені за боротьбу за незалежність України.
And also I was sent to build these like roads in Siberia, in Taiga, because the KGB, they saw that my ancestors were like fighting for the independence of Ukraine. Like they went, they were like participants of the fight for the independence of Ukraine. And so they saw it, this KGB, and also because of that, they also sent me to this Siberia to build roads.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, can you hear us properly? Is it, can you understand what?
Yeah.
Maybe if not,
Yes.
tell me, I will try maybe to paraphrase or explain differently. Because, okay.
I think it's fine.
Okay.
You're doing a wonderful job. Very, very good. More questions?
Mark asks, tell us more about your interview with Ilya Kaminsky. How did that come to be? Where is it published?
Ага. Я не знаю особисто Іллі Камінського. От він мені написав лист на емейл, щоб я відповів на його питання.
So I don't know actually Ilya Kaminsky personally. I'm not acquainted with him personally, but I received an email from him, and he kindly asked me to answer some questions for him. Like
Це літературне рев'ю Los Angeles Times.
This was the literature review, Los Angeles Times.
Камінський живе в Америці, в Сполучених Штатах.
Yeah, and Ilya Kaminsky, he lives in the USA.
Що я можу Джо кинути потім лінк на це інтерв'ю в Лос-Анджелесі.
If you want to, I can send you the link for this interview. Joe, I can send you the link with the interview with Ilya Kaminsky.
Повністю диву.
Like the full version, the full version of it.
Okay?
Very good, yeah. You can imagine what's going to happen to Ihor if the Russians win this war. He's going back to Siberia.
Якщо уявіть собі, що станеться з Ігорем, якщо Росія не виграє цю війну, що його назад в Сибір.
Я думаю, що розстріляють.
I think I might be shot, not like sent to Siberia, but maybe shot.
Бо я зібрав вже багато грошей для армії, і мій син...
Because I was like really trying to like to gather, you know, the donations and trying to contribute to the army. So
І я думаю, що нашу розмову теж зарахують мені як тюремний термін.
Okay, that's a joke, but my dad is saying that our like right now, the conversation that we have right now might be added to my like list of misdeeds. Yes, like what
Як
I
співпрацю з ворогом. No, excuse me.
like. Yeah, so
Collaboration with enemy.
Okay, other questions?
Yeah, one more from Val on Zoom. What is your profession now, and how can poets in Ukraine support each other during the war?
I am a scientific researcher in the Institute of Literature in capital of Ukraine, in Kyiv, and my second job, yes, job. I'm a professor of department journalist in Lviv University. I study Ukrainian history of Ukrainian literature. I teach history of Ukrainian literature and two job as scientific researcher and teacher, student.
Ще одне питання було, як поети підтримують один одного, тільки не кажи нічого поганого.
And about poets conversation, yes? Я окей. Зараз морально підтримують. Хоча в Україні зараз багато є груп різних поетів, які між собою спілкуються, але загалом зараз потрібна моральна підтримка от сімей тих, хто вже загинув. Я показував в презентації, що багато поетів уже молодих вже загинули на війні, і ми підтримуємо їх сім'ї.
Yeah. About the second question, how do poets support each other? Yes, you asked. So I think that poets support each other like morally, first of all, and should support each other morally. Some poets communicate like in groups, you know, like different groups. Also, they provide moral support to each other. And also, I really think that it's important to support those families of the fallen poets, the one who died. You know, I showed you on the slide. I showed you that we had poets who tragically died of the rocket shelling and like circumstances different. So it's important to support their families.
Peter, any more? Oh, no. We have some locally here too.
Okay, why don't you take some from me?
Okay, yes.
I was curious because he talked a lot about his poetry being as a way of connecting with God. And I'm curious about how do you stay positive in prayer during times of war?
Could you hear that?
Як ви залишаєтесь на позитиві, тобто, ну, під час писання поезії в розмові з Богом? Тобто, як ви залишаєтесь позитивно в ваших молитвах, на ваших поезіях?
Тобто, зараз коротко я сформулюю. Колись для мене символи, якби мотиваціями були поети відомі світу, так, там той же Байрон, так, чи Уїтмен. Тепер для мене є прикладом духовного життя моя бабуся, яка вставала зранку, молилася, потім працювала на полі і лягала, молилася. От я теж молюся, зрозуміло? Спочатку в мене були...
So at first, I was like, before the war started. Before the war started. So I was trying to look for motivation from like world-known poets like Byron, like Whitman. So they were my inspiration. But when the war started,
Це було замало.
it was even not enough, their example. So I was relying on an example of my grandma who was praying, who woke up very early in the morning, and she was just like praying and working. So that kept her living. That was what kept her living.
Тим більше їй було дуже важко, бо вона виховувала мене, а моя мама померла в 27 років. Вона, ну то скажи, бо вона виховувала. Я розумію, як їй було важко. Вона була репресована з Польщі і в чужу землю. Ну той момент, скажи, що...
And I understand that it was very difficult for my grandma because like she was repressed, like sent from Poland. So she was living in Poland at that time, but then they kind of forcefully she was sent to live in Ukraine, and she also had me like a small child to take care of because like my mom wasn't there, so she was my granny brought me up.
Її брат загинув теж на Другій світовій війні.
And her brother died in the World War II. So yes, it was difficult life, but she like kept praying, kept working, and that kept her
Тобто
alive.
вона для мене свята людина, і вона була й поетом. І я, тобто, як приклад для мене, for example,
So she
прожити
is
достойно це життя.
so she's an example for me how to live this life with honors, let's say, like honorably, yes, like a decent human being.
І дуже важливо ще. А поезія в мене сама народжується. Я не свідомо пишу поезію, а я її не можу не писати. От скажу. Може.
And poetry for me, it's like I cannot but write it. So it's like it comes naturally. I cannot stop writing it because like it's impossible for me to stop writing. I cannot do it.
Ну,
It's
це
like a process.
як дихання, як...
It's like breathing.
We understand.
Okay, thank you.
We understand.
Thank you.
Paul,
I've read your poems in your book, Arthania. Would you be willing to read one of them to us?
Книжка Артанія, чи ти би хотів прочитати?
Зараз англійською чи?
Do you mean like right now in English or in English?
I would be happy to hear both English, but also Ukrainian.
No problem. Just a moment. Я принесу книжку зараз і прочитаю. Скажи, що я свої вірші читаю з пам'яті практично. Те саме. Скажи, я зараз принесу книжку.
Sorry, I will just go and grab the book, okay, and I will read one poem for you. Just 1 second, please. Sorry.
Peter, are there any more questions on the?
Yes, there's one.
One more? Okay. Any more questions out here? Okay.
Not a question.
At least one. Okay.
Comment.
We'll have. We still have time, so.
Okay. Excuse me. I two my English language books. One printed in England. A Flight Over the Black Sea. Yes. With печать stamp, так? В British English pen. What? And this new my poetry book, Artania, published in United States. In publishing house Dorrance Publishing. Ну, щось маленьке. Ага, it's little, just a moment. Ні. Ні, maybe. Так, вдома. Так. Ти щось. 4 рядочки, так?
Paul would like to hear a nature poem.
No problem. Just a moment, excuse me. Тяжко вибирати.
Sorry,
Як
it's
між дітьми, які діти
difficult
краще.
to choose the same as it's difficult to choose with the kids. Like which kid is better? The same with my poems.
My old daughter or young daughter. Оце во? Ну, Надя, ще ти мене не штурхай. Ну, то що ж я зроблю зараз, якщо мене... Я хочу щось дуже хороше таке, щоб це... Ну, чого не зрозуміло? Оцей. Окей. The short poem. In Ukrainian language. Монолог мертвого. Отак лежиш собі так от, вкрившись землею, зверху коріння хреста і трави, знизу далеко зорі, як феї. Мак росте з голови, небо над нами, під нами небо, вітру камінний плащ, а вся земля, як зелений лебідь, з німбом кругом чола. And my daughter in English. Translate this point.
Sorry, I'm not very much of a reader, but okay, Monologue of the Dead. It's called Monologue of the Dead. Thus, this is how you lie beneath the ground. Roots of the cross and grass above you. Below, far stars like fairies out of bounds. And from your head grow poppy plants a few. The sky is over us, below the same. The wind wears a raincoat made of stones. And earth shines, green swan her name. A halo circling her brow since dawn. Okay, sorry.
Скажи, що я люблю іронію зараз уже в поезії.
So right now I like irony in poetry. So yes, I admire like irony in the poetry.
Okay. Noir Hector.
Yeah, I don't have a question. Just tell Ihor that Kevin from DeLand, Florida says hello. And that when all this mess is over, please make your way back to Florida.
Yeah. Kevin, you,
I know, what?
you say it. I can't.
Oh, okay.
Get up.
Thank
Noir.
you very much.
Okay.
He'd like to see you.
Звичайно, приїду.
Of course, I will try my best to come to visit Florida.
І я так само можу сказати, що я вас в Україну запрошу, коли вже тут можна буде запросити, не буде тривоги і ракет.
And also, I very much welcome you to Ukraine when there like rockets, the shellings are over. I would really like to see you here. When
Yeah, I would love to come out there, man. I know it's been 10 years, you probably don't remember, but we loved you down in the land. And I hope you come back to Florida when all this mess is over and when Ukraine has prevailed.
Що ти зможеш приїхати в Флориду, коли це закінчиться.
Може, ще один віршик? Ні?
Добре.
Не треба віршик. Скажи, що я знайшов дуже гарні віршики, але вже читати не буду.
Ну, не треба сказати, читай все.
Ну, скажи, що знайшов. Ну, скажи.
Не буду сходитися.
Ні. Добре, окей. Окей.
We have another question.
Ще запитання.
Please do.
Слухай,
My question is, I know the Soviet government was putting pressure on poets. How is the Ukraine government for you? Do they put pressure on you as well?
ну, тобто я знаю, що в Радянському Союзі тиснули поетів, чи український уряд зараз ти скажеш?
Ні, зараз зовсім, мабуть, до поетів байдужі зараз практично.
Right now, like there is not so much attention to poets, you know, so like no pressure, you know. Yes, so no, it's good. They're like it's good.
До поетів, да. То є свої плюси і мінуси,
There
звичайно.
are also some like pros and cons in that, of course, but yes.
Я сам на себе тисну найбільше.
I am my biggest, like, I pressure myself the most, like,
І моя совість.
and my consciousness, and me, like, I myself, I put pressure on me, like, I'm.
Скажи, дуже важливо, що я дуже хотів 2 рази піти на війну ходив, але мене не беруть, оскільки я вже старший і професор університету, щоб вони розуміли, чого я.
I also wanted to enroll in the army, but I was told, like, for right now, I'm a bit, like, over, how to say it, like, overage I have too many, like, years for right now, and
Ну, що я професор університету не
I'm
беру.
also, like, the university professors, right now, they have kind of, like,
Ну, бронь, ну, не беруть, коротше.
yeah, right now, like, they told me, it's okay, like, you can stay a civilian right now. I mean,
Закон забороняє, можна так сказати.
because the law prohibits right now for the university professors to fight.
Who in your family is currently at the front?
Але я готовий піти, скажи, якщо треба буде.
Хто в твоїй сім'ї зараз на фронті?
Husband of this my daughter. Офіси. Колоніал. Ну, скажи, що на фронті твій чоловік. Ну, не важливо.
My father is saying that my husband is in the army. Actually, he's in the military.
І брат мій.
And my father's brother, and like many of our friends,
And many friends, many.
actually many people with whom I worked earlier, they are not longer
вже дуже-
alive as well. No, like
І вже дуже багато загинуло. скажи
yeah,
тут.
yes.
Uh-huh.
So many of our friends and acquaintances, yes, they died during the military actions. Actually, yes. So,
Every day I
They-
утримую інформацію про загибель моїх близьких і дітей, моїх друзів, і це дуже мене стресує.
yeah, every day we receive information about like our friends' kids being no longer with us, and of course it's like adds to their everyday stress, everyday like, you know, situation, mental situation.
Peter, you have another question?
Yes,
Скажи, що я можу ще відповідати, якщо я на це мені цікаво.
so Linda asks, what about physics and engineering inspired your poetry initially?
You mean like in what way? Yes, physics and engineering inspired him to write. Yes, if I understood the question correctly. Yes.
Yes.
Як тебе, ну тобто, яким чином тебе надихнуло там в училищі писати вірші? Тобто фізика, інженерія, як тебе це надихнуло?
Ну, по-перше, поезія – це є творення, creation. Тобто немає, поет не тільки той, хто пише словами, творить поезію, так? І я так зрозумів, що поезія в мені вже жила, просто в Петербурзі був контраст. Військове це було не для мене, і там воно проявилося. Сама атмосфера тиску на мене, якби, вона народила в мені поета, тобто музику.
You know, because like not only poetry is creation. I mean, like I think what my dad means that engineering and physics, you also create something. Yes.
Тобто вища математика теж поезія.
Like higher math, higher mathematics is also poetry. Yes, just different one. But poetry is just you create with words. So I guess like the atmosphere in St. Petersburg, and maybe this like
Ностальгія за батьків.
nostalgia for my homeland. I was very nostalgic for my homeland, and also like the very like atmosphere and the very contrast, you know, like this like my homeland and this military contrast, it had its effect.
Але якщо за великим рахунком, я не знаю, чого в мене там це вибухнуло. Це є тайна, secret.
But to tell you the truth, I don't really know. Like, it's difficult to tell why it happened there. It's difficult to say. Thank you.
We have two more questions.
Thank you very much for very interesting question. Скажи, що я так пояснюю, що сам починаєш. Ну, може говорити. Ага, excuse me.
Go to Pavlyuk first.
Oh, I just would like to, a simple question. How can we as American poets, poets in the US, commemorate the fallen poets? How can we best commemorate their memory of the fallen poets in Ukraine?
Як ми можемо вшанувати пам'ять українських поетів, які загинули, яким чином? Тобто, може, щось організувати,
We have some ideas.
Є певні ідеї, в них є певні ідеї.
Окей, і скажи, що я буду чекати, обговоримо ще ці моменти. От якщо сиротам, в нас вже є якісь напрацювання, як допомогти сиротам, так вже є діти-сироти тих, хто загинув. То в першу чергу їм треба допомогти, бо вже їм нічим не допомог. Пам'ять. Я можу скласти список.
Yes, I think that's a very interesting, like very important issue that you ask me, and maybe that is could be like our further cooperation. Maybe we can think about it, you know, like organize maybe something as we are doing now with these orphans, as I was talking about the orphans. So it's also very important to talk about like relatives of those poets who died and maybe their kids as well. So I think that might be, you know, the cooperation that we can do in this aspect.
І я думаю, що їхню антологію можна видати в Америці.
And also it
Я
would
можу
be,
бути організатором.
and also I can help you organize to publish like the anthology, like the book of the poetries maybe in the US. That could be an idea, you know, to publish something
Ну, я
that
можу
their
бути
poems.
в порядку.
And I can help you do it, like maybe choose the poems, or like I can help you with that. I can like try to organize it in a way. Yes.
And we have an idea of
Maybe.
a Poets for Peace program that we're gonna talk about when we finish this morning briefly. And so let's move on then to the next question. Julia.
I was wondering his favorite poets of you and influences. He mentioned Kaminsky.
Хочу запитати, хто ваші улюблені поети та хто на вас вплив?
Ну, найбільший вплив мав англійський поет-романтик Байрон.
The most influence I had, it was from Byron.
Далі японський лірик тонкий Ісікава Такубоку.
And then Japanese lyrics writer Ishikawa Takuboku.
Далі американського Джека Лондона я сприймаю як поета. Він мені дуже близький за структурою єдності тексту і життєтексту. Тобто.
Then American writer, you know, Jack London. But he's very close to me in the way he writes and in his structure, like how he combines his text and his meanings, like text and what is behind the text. So also he was my influencer and inspirer.
Далі Уїтмен, Уолт Уїтмен, як дуже вільний, ну такий за свободою відчуття, як людина, ну, вільна.
Then Walt Whitman, because he was very like free person, very inspiring, free person.
Я, наприклад, ще знаю сучасних поетів, але щоб поет уже відбувся, то він як зернина має спочатку, має пройти час, померти і тоді стати поетом. Тому що сучасні поети, і в тому числі я, ще невідомо, чи я відбудуся як справді великий, справжній поет світу.
Okay, and then I also like many contemporary writers, but I think that for them to like open fully to their full potential, we still need time. Like, you know, for the poet to, again, to show his full potential and so we can appreciate him the most, it needs time. Like,
так, і ще дуже важливо, що я ціную, я казав в своїй промові, що я ціную поетів за чесність біографії, яка є єдина із текстом. Тобто Ісус Христос для мене найбільший поет. Він не писав, але він створив релігію. Оце найбільший поет світу.
Yes, and I also appreciate those poets whose biographies go in line with their writing. Do you know what I mean? Like the biographies, they correspond to the writing. Like, yes, for example, like Jesus Christ, his life and his teaching, they went in one line, like that, like they correspond. The life of the person and what he or she was writing.
Чи Будда, так, вони створили свою релігію. Надя, ти або мене перебиваєш, або ти тут, а я не знаю.
For example, Buddha also, he created his own religion.
Тобто, хто творить не ідеологеми, а релігії, тобто це найбільші поети світу. Або так, як там Джек Лондон, скажімо, прожив єдність життя як поет, великий поет, тобто, і працелюбний дуже, ну так, як і я.
Or for example, Jack London, like his life was very interesting on its own. Like he had very interesting life and he was very much hardworking. And I am trying to be as hardworking as he was. So he's also my, yes, he inspires me in that sense.
Great, thank you. We have one more question, Shirley.
It's not a question, it's a blessing and an invitation. When Ukraine is once again at peace, come back to America. These poets will welcome you with bread and salt and speak the truth.
Thank you very much. Скажи, що я мав пропозиції з кількох країн зараз взяти громадянство, але я не міг покинути Україну, бо я не можу жити в іншій країні, але я з задоволенням в Америку хочу ще приїхати, тому що мені там було добре, коли я б там жив. Але я все одно хочу жити в Україні, це така доля, моя душа поета.
Yes, I had offers actually from like a few countries. I was invited to come and like take their residency, but I like living in Ukraine, and I think my soul needs to stay here, and I think that I really need to stay here and live in Ukraine.
Але я дуже хочу в Америку ще приїхати своїм
I would be very glad like to just come visit the USA, but to live, it's I like living in Ukraine.
Якщо мене не розстріляють.
If I survive, let's say mildly.
We understand, we understand.
Okay.
Peter, was there one more question?
Yeah, one more question, Val. You have your hand raised. I think you should be able to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, this has been, oh, my heart. Thank you. Two questions. Are you working on anything now? And when do you write? What is your practice? What inspires you to write, or do you write every day, or? Yeah.
Sorry, just it was a little bit, I overheard. You were asking if he's writing any books right now, yes? Or anything, if he's working on some writings right now, yes?
Something else. And when does he write?
Okay, thank you so much. Чи ти зараз працюєш над чимось таким, ну, тобто якимось твором?
Так.
І коли ти пишеш, чи ти, наприклад, чи в тебе там зранку?
Very interesting questions. Так, я люблю дуже писати в дорозі, але я пишу весь час. Я навіть зараз пишу. Тобто, відповідь. Але я найбільше пишу, коли я подорожую. Я люблю, тому я не маю авто, тому що я пишу в транспорті.
Okay. You know, I like writing everywhere, especially on the road. While I'm traveling, that's the best time for me. That's why I do not buy a car, because I just like traveling and writing while on the road.
І я зараз пишу одночасно, я люблю писати одночасно кілька книг. Я зараз пишу 7 книг, в мене рукопис, і я люблю писати ручкою. Не в комп'ютері. В комп'ютері я науку пишу, наукові статті, а поезію, і прозу, і драматургію я пишу ручкою, пен.
Okay. So I like writing a few books at the same time, like books or poetry at the same time. So right now I'm working on 7 books. 7 not maybe manuscripts. It's manuscripts simultaneously, and I usually write with my pen, because but my scientific works I write with the help of the computer, like journalism work. I like the computer, but the rest with the pen, like poetry and books. Always pen, like.
Де мій блокнотик? Не бачу?
I'm looking out again at anyone else here have a question or comment. Good. Peter, any more on the, no. Good.
Десь нема блокнотика.
I think he's going to show us his notebook.
Yeah. Yes, he wanted he cannot find it.
Скажи, що я згубив свій блокнотик. У мене дуже багато блокнотиків, де я записую всі свої думки, вірші і все. І я його десь згубив. Поки...
Yeah, like I have many notes.
Where is my
I
notebook?
have small notebooks where I write all my thoughts down, but now I cannot seem to find one.
What this? This is me. And this I write my 20 poet book and prose and drama, and this is notebook in my cash. Як то буде? Pocket, my pocket with me. And many this book from моїх 18 років і до теперішнього часу, там в мене ж мішки.
So I have like bags at home with these little notebooks since I was 18. So I have really bags of them, bags with them.
Це і розмір, size, my complete size, this notebook.
Good idea. Good idea.
Скажу, що коли він зі мною, то я спокійний.
And it feels safe for me when I have it like near my heart. It feels safe. I feel protected. Kind of.
Great. Okay, with that then, I think we're going to thank you, your beautiful daughter, for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much. Скажи, що, ну, що мені настільки з вами комфортно, що я не втомився і можу собі дуже мені з вами, як з рідною сім'єю, ніби я вас знаю 100 років вже.
Thank you so much because I felt so comfortable with you. It felt like you're a family and I know you. I have known you for 100 years. Like somehow it feels I'm not even tired as I was expected to be.
And stay on the line. We're going to continue here. Let's have a big round of applause.
Дуже
Thank
добра
you.
енергія.
You have very nice energy, very like positive energy. Thank you for that.
All right, there are two
Ми будемо
things now.
спілкуватися з Джо, і мою адресу Джо може дати кому захоче. О, скажи, що наша розмова може про хто що може запитання, то хай Джо дадуть. Ну, він дасть адресу, і я тоді письмово від.
Yeah, and maybe if you have like any other further question, Joe can provide you with their email address. So if you have any like questions, you feel free to ask. Feel free to write or feel free.
Ми можемо навіть колись видати то, як цікаву якусь книжку, нашу оця розмову таку поетів.
Maybe this like talks, maybe these talks with like different poets could be even like published later or like, you know,
Розмову поетів.
like talks with the poets, kind of like this.
Yes.
Yes, please stay, and we're going to talk about follow-up here. How we plan to follow up. We have some plans, and it's
Ні, все добре. It's okay. Та він не говорить очевидно.
Він говорить. Sorry, I'm really sorry. Are you talking right now?
О, скажи, що не чути. We don't.
Може, він виключив. Sorry, а може то вони собі говорять там далі між собою, може вони спеціально.
I think he got frozen.
Yeah, we cannot hear like what Joe is that?
Joe.
What Joe is telling.
I think the volume there in Atlanta is on. So you're okay.
Yeah, we can't hear either.
We can't hear either.
So you all aren't by yourself. They have to adjust the volume where they are.
I think we got muted on Zoom, but they'll come back. Oh, that's too bad.
Well, I'm really impressed by him. And his daughter too. She's very fluent with her English.
Yeah. Do you hear?
And I thought she was very good, and that he.
Well, you're talking to her right now, you know.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
fine. I don't care. I've got 4 daughters, so I can see that she loves
these
her father a lot.
casualties
So
for these people to be sent to Switzerland.
That's all me.
So the Ukraine has developed a superhuman facility where these people who are wounded and lost their arms and legs go, and they have counseling, and they have doctors from all over the world have come and created this center where people are counseled, given the very latest arms and artificial limbs for that. And you saw the little boy who's lost his hands. So this is a very widespread thing. And I'm hoping that somehow in the future we could support that as well. But for now, I think we should focus on the orphans. And in order to do that, I've asked Linda to come up, our treasurer, and talk about how people, if you wanted to contribute money, the money would go directly to that orphanage. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, there's corruption. It's a holdover, really, of the Russian mafia that controlled a lot of things that happened in Ukraine. So we have learned not to deal with the aid organizations, even though Red Cross and others have great reputations, a lot of money goes to overhead. So what we want to do is anyone who wants to make a contribution to help these orphans, in the specific where you saw the little boy and the picture of that building, we're going to work through NFSPS to do that. And Linda's going to come up and tell you how we plan to do that.
well, no, I don't know how we plan to do it.
We just hit her with it.
Okay. 5 minutes ago. You can either make a contribution directly to them, that's absolutely fine.
I think, though, that that would be problematic for a number of reasons.
That's their choice.
Okay, yeah.
Your opinion's fine, but their choice, okay. Sue Chambers worked really hard with, in state of Minnesota and got us certified, and we are a 501c3 now. So you can send a check to me, and then I can combine them and get them to wherever we're going. So, but make sure you can hand me a check today. Or you can mail it. I'm in Strophes. I'm on the website. Just make sure you give me your name, address, and designate it for the Ukraine orphanage.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, question.
To whom do we make out check? NFPS. Oh, make it out.
Make it out.
Make it out to me too.
Julie.
What about the donation button? The SPS button? The PayPal donation button, you want that to be?
Yeah.
Okay, let's explain, Julie. Would you explain that? Just stand up and.
Through PayPal, there is a donation button. However, PayPal takes a fee. So if you want to donate $60, then I could add something to cover the fee instead of what it is. But I would have to mail you the link until I get it on the website. I'll get it on the website, NFSPS.net. But there'll be a donation. We could put some, this about this on there as well.
Okay, we have this whole presentation, so we can pick pieces of it. and
Yeah.
Follow up.
If you don't have a checkbook.
Yeah, Paul.
So one of the questions would be the donation from us through NFSPS in the name of. So the question in my mind is, do we make it in the name of or to honor Ihor, or to honor Ihor and the Ukrainian poets who have died in the war. So that's just a question. I don't know the answer, but I'm pretending I'm Ihor in Ukraine. And somebody from the orphanage says, hey, we got a donation, and here's what it said. What would he like?
Okay, we'll figure that out when we amass whatever funds that we get. We'll then convey that money. And Linda interrupted me, but it's very typical of Linda and I. She usually does that almost infallibly, really. So the problem with sending money to Ukraine directly, it gets lost. That magazine that he held up of Poets and Poetry took 8 months to get to him. So anything that's sent by mail directly to Ukraine is subject to disappear, even if it's checked. So I think we need to be really careful from my perspective, and I know it's a lot of work for Linda, to amass the money and be sure that it's sent in a way through a direct to a bank, however we're going to do it, so that it's sure to get to that orphanage. And so that's the way I think we should do it. You could correspond, of course, directly with that orphanage if you wanted to, and that's fine. And what I've seen in looking at videos about Ukraine is that every orphanage is in need now, because the number of orphans is growing so quickly that they, like any other country, had orphanages with orphans. But now suddenly there are all these additional orphans coming. And I know that one of these orphanages that I happen to know about, they just didn't have facilities to wash the clothes and the sheets and the blankets and the pillows for the orphans, because there are only a few orphans there. Now there are many orphans. So people donated money and they put in washer dryer commercial size, so that those kids have clean clothes and clean beds to live in, which was impossible prior to that. So it's very basic needs that they have. And I hope that somehow we can evolve to help those people who have lost their limbs. I mean, that's something very specific and quite expensive. But again, they're working on that. So I guess that we're done. Yes, back there, Mary.
People that gave to me helped me change her life. My heart beats well with theirs. However, I think it's really good if we have a deadline date to collect funds. So my thought is, can we pick a date and put it on the website and get that information out so we can all get those monies at the same time instead of hopefully one nice amount of.
Good idea, Mary. Why don't we say within 30 days? If you're going to do something, contribute something, let's do it within the next 30 days. And maybe this will be something ongoing. Maybe this will be something.
Don't say 30 days, pick July 15th.
July 15th. Cheryl.
It might be good to have something that we can put into trophies that will be coming out, that everybody will be looking at in August to see about the contest results. And have your deadline something that's after that.
Yes.
Like September.
September 15th.
September 15th then. And we'll put something in trophies. I'll put something on the president's message.
I have a comment too.
Yeah.
I think Linda referred to this, but if we do the checks to NFSPS, we are a 501c3. That means whatever charitable deduction is left from the rules and regs of the IRS, you'll be able to make a deduction. So as a donation, so give generously.
Also, we have a Facebook page, we have an IG account. This should be posted on that.
Who will do that?
Whoever.
Bernadette.
Bernadette? Okay.
And I just wanna all the other people who have Facebook accounts and a lot of people in here, I know a lot of people like me also have a Facebook business account. It would be good for them to share, make sure that you're sharing that as well from NFSPS's.
Is Bernadette
Social
here?
media, use your social media.
Shirley, will you follow up with Bernadette?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Okay, well, this was an historic moment for NFSPS. It was a little bit chunky, it was a little bit disjointed, but I think the points were made and your time was well spent. And I thank all of you for being a part of this and for your continuing help. Thank you very much. And thanks for signing up for Poets for Peace. We hear you.
Ihor, can we get your email address? If you don't mind.
No problem. And I write in chat. Yes?
Oh, okay, good idea. And daughter of Ihor, I didn't get your
Now
first
I
name.
write my email address.
Thank you.
Так, окей. Так, це англійська. Ага.
That was very good.
Добре там все пишеться. Так.
I'm gonna ask the admin if they'll mute.
Yeah, let's get the email address first.
Yeah, but I want them to mute themselves.
It's my email address. Pavlyuk.
There it is.
1967. Repeat and gmail.com.
Okay, thank you.
Are you pretty much able to keep on getting on the internet?
Є, чи ти маєш можливість, ну, тобто, в інтернеті завзятися і так далі? Ну, тобто, чи...
Ну, маю, тільки є різниця в часі, то трошки важко. То краще мені писати, я це краще розумію.
We have internet, everything is fine.